you can discover your purpose if you start with autonomy, which is self-determination. You decide to do whatever you want and you do it with discipline, consistency. Your purpose is like that North Star. The North Star, the one that is guiding you. I'm going there. I'm not likely to going to reach North Star, at least in this life, but it's there. It's guiding me. Future of work hopefully is more distributed. That doesn't mean you're never going to see your teammates, you're going to never work at the same time. No, because we are social creatures. We need that.
On today's episode, David Gamboa, from a VP in corporate world to a founder of a company, redefining what remote work can and should be. David, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm glad to have you on. Could you walk me through your early days and help me understand what influences shaped you and who you are today?
My early days take me back to Latin America, that's where I'm from. I grew up in Colombia. I'm 36 years old at the moment, so there's a lot of things that have happened throughout my days that have influenced what I do and how I live and what I believe today. And then it would take us 10 hours to go through them or more. But if I go back to the early days, I would say grew up in Bogota, capital city of Colombia, in a very, let's say, traditional family, for not saying very squared and closed-minded. So I think that's perhaps where I can start, because growing up in a very rigid, let's say, way of thinking in which success was defined by school, uni, getting a good job, excelling in your job, and then retiring, family and all that, like pretty much cookie cut lifestyle. That sort of began influencing everything that I did, because it added a lot of rigidity to what I was supposed to do and what I was supposed to follow. And I did it for the best part of 30 years, which my life completely changed 6 years ago. But I followed that path, did chemical engineering, finance.
Did you ever question the path that you were supposed to be doing?
As of now, I tend to think that, I know it's very cliche, but like everything happens for a reason. And if I had not done that, maybe I would not be here. So I try to learn from all of that. If I had the ability to choose if I do it again, maybe not. But I'm grateful for all of that. So, following that, very traditional growing up, school, uni, masters. Then I did 6 years of finance here in London. And I think internally, I was always a very creative person. And I wanted to do things differently. I wanted to actually be a Pixar animator. I wanted to go down the 3D animation studios.
When did you know that that's something that you'd like to do?
Very early. I used to love to draw. My walls in my room were drawn by pencil. Big, let's say, superhero fan when I was growing up. So all of these stories, the storytelling, the creativity was always around, but I was never sort of allowed to do that. Yeah, it wasn't forbidden, but it wasn't encouraged. And, this is just sort of the way I was raised. And therefore, I think there was something internal that wanted to break free and break loose and explore different things. So I think that's what really, really shaped my early years. And as I grew up and I matured a bit more and I messed it up and life, continued.
What do you mean you messed it up?
Different things. I think throughout life, you make choices and some of them are better than others. I always tried to, let's say, stick to that path and that structure that was meant to be successful. And I did it quite well, I would say.
So was it your family's influence in your life that made you so, not religiously, but so diligently follow that path?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. 100%. I think when you're raised, and there's an element there of sort of not wanting to disappoint your parents.
Was that a strong factor?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So it's like, well, this is what it is. This is what I know. And this is my context. I'm a big believer that if you change your context, you change your life. And you should always strive to get out a little bit in the edge of that context, right? What people call the comfort zone, stuff like that. So it's like, that was my context and that was what I knew. And I think coming to London, which is a very, diverse city in the world, sort of opened my mind. Traveling the world also helped in the early days as well. And then all of this sort of just made it a time ticking bomb, let's say, for me to actually go out and do something different. So all of these things influenced what I do right now.
You worked in the corporate world for a decade. What did that decade teach you?
Lots of things. Let's say lots of lessons, good lessons. I think all lessons are lessons, but I think maybe good and bad experiences to that regard. I used to work I graduated as a chemical engineer, and I used to work in the oil and gas business. I did that for almost 4 years as an engineer, out there on the rigs, on the field.
So very physical and
Very physical,
okay.
very physical. I mean, I used to have a complete different lifestyle in the sense that I would be sent abroad or on these like month-long missions or shift work. And that was it. That was my reality, like in the middle of nowhere, stuff like that. So that taught me a lot of good things. It gave me a lot of resilience.
Walk me through a day in your days back then.
Yeah.
How would that look like? How would that feel like for you?
It was very intense. So for those who are not very familiar with the oil and gas industry, I mean, it never stops. Oil and gas keep pumping every day because energy is used every day. I mean, it is what at this point in time sort of drives most of the energy consumption and fuels and all of that. So it's 24/7. So it never stops, and it's very expensive. So I was on the rigs, and that never stops. The cost of operating a rig is into the millions of dollars per day. So we were under pressure to get the job done efficiently, without mistakes, at whatever time that was. So there was never the same day, never. But I could tell you, for example, one of the worst days. So it would be like 2 a.m. in the morning. You are woken up. You're in your container with 3 other people.
So you live in a container.
Yeah, you live in a container with 3 other guys, mostly men. It's a very sort of
male dominant
industry. It's changing a lot, but it is because it's very rough as well. A lot of heavy lifting, and then that's what tends to happen. And then 2 a.m. in the morning, open up the door, pouring rain. You have to be there for hours until the job is done. And I remember one point it was 72 hours of on the job with a few power naps here and there. And you cannot stop until that happens. So a lot of resilience, you know what I mean? A lot of valuing what it is to be mentally strong, physically strong, and also what it is to work as teams, right? Very early, I was the leader of these sort of crews, and that taught me a lot of humility, humbleness as well, because I come here at my 21 leading these people that have been on the field forever. And they have more experience than I do.
Why was that dynamic like that?
Because I was the guy with the degree, guy with the diploma.
I see.
And yes, I mean, some maths were required and some engineering calculations, and fair enough. But I had to learn on the go how to lead and how to lead by example. Because if you're not going to do the hard work and get dirty, nobody's going to respect you. So it's very military in that way. So I think that was my engineering days. A lot of resilience, a lot of leadership, a lot of teamwork. And also it gave me perspective of what work was and life was. Completely put them in 2 camps. I mean, either I had a life outside of work or I was at work. So this was my first experience that started shaping everything that I do right now with Live Beyond, because it's like there were 2 different lives. So I had to play and then pause my life, and then play and then pause my work.
Is it because the work was so intense that you couldn't possibly compare it to whatever your life felt like when you were off work?
Exactly. And it was shift work. So I was sent for 30 days, 60 days, and then you come back home to rest, basically. When you're there, you're on the job every day. So you basically don't have an integration or a balance, So that was that. And then finance here in London, a lot of different highly paced work. I had sort of the experience of what it was to check all the boxes of success, let's say, quote unquote. So, the career, the position, the salary, the bonuses, the lifestyle in London.
What was the best one of those all?
Of all these?
Yeah, of the boxes, of the conventional idea of success. What was the one that held you the longest?
I think it's just what held me really was the fact that I was good at what I was doing, So the fact that I was being challenged, I was integrating all that I learned from oil and gas into finance. So I was on the other side. So I had to know a lot of the things that were going on around the world. So it really challenged me intellectually. And I was seeing the rewards of that. I mean, I had a good position. I had a really good team. I was meeting the CEOs and CFOs of all these energy companies around the world, learning how they run companies, how they react to crisis, the 2014 crash in oil prices. I was there to see it. So it was really interesting. So I think that was challenging or sort of encouraging for me. However, you realize, and I did that as well in the oil and gas days, that money doesn't really fuel happiness, doesn't really fuel joy, meaning at work. So that was the big lesson of, I think, over 10 years, that I was completely disengaged with what I was doing, completely separate who I was, you know.
And that made you feel,
if I had to use a word, would be empty, you know. So it's like, there's a good book that is called Lost Connections by Johan Hari. He talks about, I think it's 9 different causes of that lead to depression, or 9 different things that would lead to depression. And one of them is that lack of meaningful work, right? Meaningful relationships, meaningful work. I think that's one of the things that really impacted me. I always share with our Live Beyond members that we are called human beings for a reason. We're not called human doings. And I think when you disconnect the doing with the being, there's some things to correct. And if you can be and do in harmony, that's really when you find meaning and happiness and everything that we're striving for. So I was completely disconnected. You know, one thing was my work, one thing was my life. One thing was David, the creative soul, which I've always been. And then it was David, let's say the banker, that was there with the suit and on. And then it was play and pause, the same thing, but it wasn't now 30 days or 60 days. Now it was Monday to Friday, you know. And then, so I was disconnected. So these were the biggest lessons of 10 years. So in 10 years, I achieved, let's say, success to
conventional
success. I think it's important for every single person to redefine what success means to them.
Very true.
And I don't really think there's one mold of success. It really varies. And that wasn't for me, you know. I mean, it was great. I learned a lot of things, but it was time for a change.
How did you stay so long knowing that you have this creative side and having this pull towards it? How did you stay so long, aside being intellectually challenged?
I think there were the goalposts, and this is something that I still do. So, for example, I pay a lot of attention on the process or on the journey of getting somewhere, but it's setting yourself goalposts. So, okay, so I'm gonna do this for X amount of time. So when I did this in the oil and gas industry, it was, okay, I'm gonna stay here for at least 2 years. I'm not gonna quit in 2 years. So I need to, that's my goalpost, and maximum 3 years, right? So a lot of people in the oil and gas industry stay because of the money. It's they pay you.
So why 2-3 years?
Because it was, I mean, lots of things, like I want to do a master's at some point. So it's like, I'm going to give myself at least 2. So I couldn't quit before. I mean, I wanted to quit many times, but then I couldn't. Then that was the goalpost. And then it was like max 3 years. Like, I'm not going to stay here out of complacency or just like comfort or the money, right?
So you had almost set yourself light in the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
At every chapter.
Yes.
And I guess that motivated you to take everything you can from that experience and learn as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. And then it also changes your mindset, because it's like, I'm choosing to do this. It's not, oh, I have to do this. I'm forced to do this. And it's just as simple as that. And you can do it with anything in your life. You just switch the script, flip it. Like, I get to do this. I'm doing this because I'm choosing to, not because I have to. And this is something that sort of one of my principles in life, which is like always keep autonomy front and center. So if somebody takes my autonomy, that's when things start, you know, hitting the fan. So, and then in finance, it was a mixture of my legal situation in London, which was I was forced to work because I was tied to a visa. So I think that's what really accelerated the process of getting out of there, because then it wasn't only a choice, but I had to be tied to this job, right? But then as soon as I was free of that,
you became free in every other way.
Yeah.
I love that. So you were doing really well in your corporate career. You were a vice president of equity research in BNP, but as we established, you weren't fulfilled. So what was missing?
Sense of purpose, right? Sense of what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Something that would sort of give my life meaning. I think that was what was missing, meaning at whatever I was doing, right? Because the rest was there. I was living a very comfortable life, financially. I could travel, I could, do all these things. But when you don't have that meaning, that's what it was. As I said, it was disconnected.
How does one find the meaning for themselves? How did you find your meaning?
And there's different theories. I'm going to share what I think, what was mine, right? So mine came about through, let's say, hardship, right? So I was almost 10 years in the corporate world. And when you are not living, let's say, with a meaningful life, in my case, I was trying to fill that emptiness, those gaps, with other things, right?
What things?
Let's say distractions.
What distractions?
They would vary depending on the time of my life, but like the usuals, I would say. I've never been a person that has gone down, let's say, the drugs world, but let's say it's very easy to, in a culture like the British one, to go to the pub and have a few drinks, and then that leads to the party, and then repeat, right? Distractions. Also, a distraction is traveling, anything that really distracts you from the moment, from the present situation. So
from what's going on inside.
Exactly. So I would travel, I would go out, I would meet friends, I would do anything but be by myself and with everything that had been accumulating over 30 years of life. So I think the first thing was an implosion of everything, right? Which made me question everything.
What triggered it?
Let's say at that point in life, a few things that came down at the same time. So in my career, there was like the oil crash was subsiding, but there was like a lot of other situations that meant maybe restructuring of teams. So I was like, okay, I might lose my job. Never really happened in that way, but it was a worry that I had. When you are not living in the present, but you're worried about what could happen in the future, which I think it's a very human thing that can consume you. So that was one thing. Then family things, relationship things. So it all like dark clouds that came all together and triggered a dark time. And then I was like, okay, that made me question absolutely everything. It was like, why am I doing this? I'm not really happy. You know what I mean? There's this story that I tell whenever I do workshops. In London, I used to exercise a lot. I mean, this is something that has always been part of how I live, and I like to run. And I used to live in a neighborhood here called Maida Vale, Little Venice. And there's these nice canals around, and I was running in one of them. And there was this black board with chalk by the canal. And it said, "Before I die, ... And people would write what they would do before they died. And I remember I was running and I stopped my run because I found it a very deep and meaningful question. And I took a piece of chalk and I wrote, "I want to be happy." Then I put the chalk down and I kept running. Well, fast forward to this dark moment of my life, I realized that I was living wanting to be happy some point in the future before I died, which is, it just hit. It was pretty crazy. It was like, okay, I want to be happy before I die, but why am I not being happy right now? So I started questioning all of those things and then completely changed the way I was living, found a lot of things that I resonate with in terms of like mindfulness, other sort of philosophies that I started to get into that started to open my awareness of different ways of living. And that clarity started to, let's say, or that awareness started to clarify what my purpose is, right?
So I think there's a path and a bridge between the dark moment where you had So David that was escaping his true problems
Mhm.
and was trying to avoid spending time with himself versus David that had mastered the awareness and was on the right path of surrounding himself with new knowledge, like-minded people, inspiring authors. That bit in between, how did you get there?
First thing is asking for help. I think maybe the way I was raised, but I know it's very common in the world, is we tend to be afraid or embarrassed to seek for help and to raise the hand and say, look, I'm going through this. And had never gone to therapy, for example. And at that point, I was like, well, something's going on. I need some help. And for the first time in my 30 years, I went to a therapist. And I was very lucky. And anybody that is going through this and is considering seeking therapy, I'd advise to date a couple of therapists, let's say, in the sense of like meet them, see if you get along, and then commit, right? Because it's very easy to just say like, I need a therapist, check, you go, fix me. It doesn't work like that. And then you say, this doesn't work, and then you leave it. So, but the thing is that you have to do the work. It's not the therapist who's going to fix you. You fix yourself. They help you become a little bit more aware. So that it started.
Which is the job of therapists, coaches,
Exactly.
and any other professional that's there to help you. But the way that they actually help you is they're your mirror and they help you unlock that truth for yourself.
Exactly. That's it. And then maybe provide a tool here or there. But it started like that. I was very lucky that my therapist had this sort of background in yoga. She was also a yoga master, let's say yoga teacher, instructor. I was given one book, which was called, it is called Peace is Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh, who used to be, let's say, renowned as the father of mindfulness for the Western world. Vietnamese Buddhist monk, passed away sadly this year. So that book brought into my life mindfulness, the concept of mindfulness. I had never heard about it before, never. And I was like, okay, what is this thing? Like being in the present moment, like just, don't worry about the future, don't worry about the past, just be in the moment, be grateful for what you have, focus on what you can control, the impermanence of it all, connect to your body, connect to your mind, bridge them with the breath. And I was like, what is this? I mean, and that started changing things. That started clarifying things. I became a little bit more aware and started the journey of self-awareness. And I think when you are able to still the mind and be moments of your life in which you can actually tame your mind and be a bit more in the moment without the noise, you clarify things. So that's why I come back to the clarity of the purpose or the clarity of the vision, right? I like to think more about a life vision rather than a life purpose. So
I was going to ask you, what's your relationship with the word purpose?
Yeah, so I think, the way I see now life and work is the same, right? Before I used to see it as two different things, and my experience was work or life. In the corporate world, it's very common to talk about work-life balance. I like to think about it differently.
Work-life integration.
Exactly. Work-life integration, work-life harmony. So integrate both in a harmonious way. That's why I think the whole thing about remote work and what's happening around the world is very important, because it allows you to do that if you do it properly. So what I was going with this is I tend to see it, there's many things that we can apply from life or business into this concept. So we talk about, for example, in companies about what's the mission of your company, or what's the vision of your company, or what are the values of your company. Well, you can apply the same principles to your life. What is the vision of your life? What is the mission of your life? What are the values of your life? So I tried to structure it in this way, and I took this from a guy that I like a lot and respect a lot called Jim Collins. He wrote a few books on business mainly, like Good to Great, How the Mighty Fall. There's another one called Beyond Entrepreneurship. And he has this way to define vision. A vision is composed by three things, right? Your core values, your purpose, and your mission. And I tend to think about it that way. So if you tend to think about the three, your values or your core values and beliefs are those things that would be like the non-negotiable. These are my values, my beliefs. You can always talk a little bit more about that. Then it's your purpose, right? Your purpose is like that North Star. The North Star, the one that is guiding you. Like, I'm going there. I'm not likely to going to reach the North Star, at least in this life, but it's there. It's guiding me, right? And then the mission is the mission I am in right now. So that goalpost, right, to get closer to the purpose. Those three would build the vision. So now I tend to have that. So the purpose is that thing that I am always looking at, and that comes out of the values and the things I believe. And then my mission is whatever I'm doing right now. And I will accomplish that mission, hopefully soon. And then there's another goalpost, and then there's another goalpost.
So in this structure, mission is like a goal. It's
in a
the
way.
synonym.
Yeah. Jim Collins calls it BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? It has to be big. It has to be hairy, like complicated. Audacious, something that, because
inspires you.
Exactly.
What is your purpose?
My purpose right now would be, I tend to different things right now. I think, for example, purpose, the North Star is always there, but I think it sort of adjusts through life. There is this concept, this Japanese concept of ikigai, and I think it's very similar to purpose, right? This sweet spot of what makes you jump out of bed every morning, right? What you love, what you can be paid for, what the world needs, what you're good at. You find that sweet spot, amazing. Those four things sort of change through your life, right? I think my purpose is to really to serve, and to be able to give back and share whatever I can share that I learned through my own process of evolution, right? I think this whole thing is encompassed by evolution, to get from here to there through a few missions and hopefully closer to that purpose. You're evolving through life. So that is sort of my personal, just to serve, to make myself of service, right? So that's how I would define it. Yeah.
I resonate to that very much. And I think people that have this in common, I've met a lot of people that have this trait in common, to want to serve. And there's just a different zest about, it seems, the way they live their life and experience their life. And for myself, for example, until I realized that what was lacking in my life was precisely the aspect of the service and being really intentional in building my life and my professional choices around service, which is also why this podcast has come about, and also the coaching side of my business has come about. It was never it for me in life, whatever I was doing before. So I genuinely think that the service part is the magic ingredient in leading a full life.
Yeah. I mean, it goes down to, I always speak this with my friends, and I go like, whenever I have kids, I'm going to encourage them to go and take, maybe a few months or years of hospitality, to serve others, to know what it is to put yourself to service, right? It is something that sort of helps as well. I've done it in my life as well, but that would be it, I would say.
True, actually. I mean, my longer background is retail, is sales, and basically all my life I've been working with people. So I guess that's true, that there's that desire, there's that connection. I love people. Anyway. Okay, so tell me about your core values.
Right now, I would say, I think I've mentioned a few over already. So bringing them back to home, it would be like autonomy is one of them. Autonomy for me is one of the things that I value the most, right? And I used to be this person who would just live without, let's say, having a specific set of values. And I think that's okay. It's like, now that I know that what they are, I can build my vision and have a clear understanding of my purpose, because I know what I value.
So it's very, very
important. It's very important, right? What I said is okay is because it's not common. So anybody that is listening, take a while and question, What are your values? And I think that sometimes it is taken as this question of like, oh, morality and like, what are my values and whatever. But it's very important to define what do you value, right? So I always try and change the script to make it a bit more easy for me to understand. What are my values? Okay, well, what sounds nice? Honesty, whatever. Yeah, all of these things sound very nice, but what do you really value? And I sort of now came with this, again, let's say structure, but not to put it rigidity, right? But I like to think about value construction. So anybody that wants to find out what their values are, the main question would be, what do you need? What are your needs? What are your basic needs, right? And then we can talk about different hierarchy of needs and stuff like that. But what do you need? What are your healthy needs, right? And you can see that through the mirrors of your relationships. So if you know that one of the things that you need from somebody is, let's say, honesty, consistency, reliability, you value those things. So you can go, okay, one of my values is honesty. One of my values is reliability. One of my values is integrity, right? I value autonomy. So for me, I tell you maybe, let's say two top would be autonomy. So the ability to do what I want, the way I want it, however I want it, whenever I want it, right? And we lost that. We have lost it in the world. And that's why I dedicated Live Beyond. And Live Beyond's purpose is to humanize the global workplace. That's the company's purpose. Why? Because we lost it. We have been fixed to these hours of the day to work and these offices and all of that. Things are changing. And I'm glad. But autonomy is one of them. And you asked me how to find your purpose. There is this other way that I would say people can try. And this is based on a model by a guy called Daniel Pink. Dan Pink. He wrote several books. One of them is called Drive. And it's all about motivation. And it's intrinsic motivation, right? We have extrinsic motivators that we have spoken about. So the three, let's say, top extrinsic motivators are money, power, fame. Maybe you can add there beauty, right? Like there are extrinsic motivators. Intrinsic motivators, which we can couple to the ikigai and things that really come intrinsically to serve, the joy of the process, the joy of doing something for the mere fact of doing it, the journey, not the outcome, right? So all of these motivators are basically what drive you and your existence and your purpose and your happiness and everything that we talk about, which is all the same at the end. So I would say that if you wanted to, in Daniel Pink's model, you can discover or uncover your purpose if you start with autonomy, which is self-determination. You decide to do whatever you want, and you do it with discipline, which is another of my core values, self-discipline and consistency, right? And if you are autonomous, if you have the freedom to be autonomous, and you are self-disciplined, which you can teach yourself to be disciplined, and you have consistency, which you can also teach yourself to be consistent. It's very related to resilience, right? And being able to fail and keep going and fail and stand up and fail and do it again. If you do that, you're going to develop the second step, which is mastery, right? Which is self-mastery. You will become good at whatever it is that you're doing with autonomy and self-discipline. So then you have the theories of the 10,000 hours to become a master at anything, right? It doesn't, that's one, but it's just repetition of whatever you do. If you become good at something, you start liking that, whatever it is. If it's either being in banking or being in oil and gas, that's also fine. That's fine. The thing is, I wasn't there because I wasn't following these things. But if you develop self-mastery, you can then go to the third holy grail, which is self-expression, or let's say that sense of
self-actualization.
Self-actualization. That's the word I was looking for. The self-actualization. So it's, self-determination, self-mastery, self-actualization. That's the purpose. So you can uncover your purpose. You don't have to make up one as well.
Yeah. Actually, I just want to add that I share this value of yours of autonomy. I've just called it freedom. So that's one of my core values. And I think it's such an important one. And when I say freedom, I mean it on all levels. So physical freedom to be able to, walk around where you want to go, live where you want, and also mental freedom, probably the most important one. So not being constricted by the societal norms and not believing whoever tells you you should believe in. Then there's emotional freedom. So not being held back by your past traumas and past triggers. So there's so many levels of that, but I found it curious.
100%.
Exactly the
100%.
same. Yeah.
I love that. It's like, and then on the emotional side and the mental side as well, it's limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Those beliefs that you don't even know you have, but are there because of the way you were raised.
And those are the ones that really restrict your freedom more than anything.
Yeah.
Because we know people like Viktor Frankl, their physical body was contained and he could not have freedom with that. But the thing that really changed his life and changed many other people's lives who read his work is the mental freedom, which we control.
Exactly.
If
that's
we
the
put
thing.
in the work.
Sometimes these limiting beliefs are subconscious and they rule, some people say 70% of our daily lives. And then, there's all these things. And the second main value I would say is integrity. Just say equals do. It's hard to do it. I have to teach myself and practice all the time, because these things are like, okay, but if you know what you value, it doesn't mean that you are on a high horse saying like, I'm the most autonomous of people and I'm the most, I live by integrity every day. You will fall off track.
Of course.
But the important thing is to come back.
Yeah. And when did you define your core values for yourself?
When did I do this? This was over this, so as I said, I'm 36 now. The whole thing sort of began, the journey, when I was 30. And I think this idea of really sitting down and defining and really like, why do I live, or what do I live by, was when I read a book, or I started to read a book by a guy called Ray Dalio, Principles of Work and Life. And basically the guy had his principles, like, I live by these principles. And I was like, that's really cool. And I resonate with him in a few other ways, and mindfulness, meditation, other things. And I was like, well, it'd be really cool to define my own values. And then I went through other different workshops and things. There's this thing that Mind Valley does. Mind Valley, this one called Life Book, right? And Life Book is looking at different areas of your life and understanding, what do I believe about this particular category of my life? What do I believe about this? Why do I value this? So it's doing the work. But when, maybe 2 years ago, 2 years and a half ago, something like that.
Do you think your life would have been much more different if you had done it way back?
I don't know. This is one of the things that I pointed to. It would have been different. Who knows how? I'm pretty sure that maybe in that alternate universe, that path would have been different,
The only reason why I asked this is because I asked this question to virtually anyone that I meet, and all of my friends, what are their core values? Do they know what their core values are? And I am constantly surprised by the amount of people that have never, ever asked this question to themselves.
Exactly.
How can you build the life that you want? How can you move towards your vision? How can you create the reality of your dreams if you don't know who you are? Because essentially, defining your values is defining who you really are, in my books at least. And so when you know your values, then whatever decision comes your way, whatever opportunity or challenge comes your way, you're able to cross-check it with your values and be like, okay, well, I'm going to confront the situation in this way, because if I don't, this is going to be in direct breach with my values. And we all know where that takes us. So yeah, that's the reason why I asked you this. I think it's just so important to...
It is a good question. What I meant earlier about like, and that's okay, as in like being the norm, is because...
It is the norm.
It is the norm.
It is the
norm. The way I see, let's say, life is as an experience, right? So your life experience, you're here in this reality to experience things through contrast. And you contrast every day at all times with mirrors, that are other humans or
Yes.
other situations. These mirrors give you contrasts, and the contrasts, you read them through your emotions. So this feels good, this feels bad in the broad sense of the spectrum, like anger, depression, whatever, joy, happiness, excitement, optimism. And you contrast, and then you start fine tuning through your experience what you like, what you don't like, what you value, what you don't value. So that's why I think that the process of setting values is never ending, really, because I don't know what's left for me to experience and contrast. And at that point, I'm going to go like, okay, well, I value this one.
Yeah.
And it becomes part of my core values. I think the journey is long, hopefully, or whatever. It is what it is. But for example, I know that I had to sit down and think about my values and my beliefs at that point in my life because of all the contrasts I had. So that's why I would encourage people to like don't be disappointed, but like it's a good question to ask yourself. And if you're listening to this podcast, it's pretty much you're asking yourself these questions. So it's good to question, why do you believe what you believe?
Yes.
Why do I behave the way I behave? Why do I do what I do?
Asking questions is the best thing you can probably do.
Yeah, exactly.
For yourself
exactly.
and your self-development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is actually the reason why I called this podcast, Is This It?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's an open question. So is this it for you, David? What you're doing, does this feel like your purpose?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it is now. Probably will change
Mm-hmm.
with time.
Mm-hmm.
Is this it for me, this podcast?
Mm-hmm.
It is now, for sure.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I actually created this is because I want to encourage and inspire people to ask questions. When you ask the right questions, you'll have answers. When you ask empowering questions, you'll get empowering answers. This is actually another tool that you can use for yourself. Sometimes I think we get carried away and don't check the voice, the constant voice that's within us, and we just allow it to be this Debbie Downer, negative, pushover. Whereas if we check that voice, we become present, we become aware of that voice, and then we can just hijack that voice and be like, actually, this is not serving me. How about I start asking better questions to myself? Well, how could this actually be great for me? How could this situation that seems awful in this moment could actually be the very trigger to something absolutely amazing down the line?
Exactly. And it's the whole concept of contrast, right? This experience was a contrast. What do I have to refine? That's why I like the word self-refinement. And you're refining yourself every day. And if you think about the questions, it's like I always try to think about it in the most of the simple terms. Like you do an exam at uni or whatever. An exam is full of questions. So you're examining that. And there's this famous, quote, I think it was by Aristotle, that says the unexamined life is not worth living. And it's very true. If you live an unexamined life, it's not worth living. And this is not to sound like dramatic or anything, but it's like the worthwhile living life is the one that you examine all the time. You're examining your life. You're asking questions about your life, and on a constant basis. I think asking better questions lead to better answers, and they clarify things. It's always easier said than done, but like if you're not asking yourself something, life will show you something, or it will help you, force you to ask yourself something, sometimes through suffering, which is the basis of Buddhism and stuff like that.
It's so interesting that all these tools, they're so basic and they're so simple, yet they're the most powerful tools that we have to actually change our lives for the better. And it's fascinating how little we make use of them.
Yeah. And it's the whole concept of common sense is not common action. Yeah, these things make common sense. And everybody might go like, yeah, I know this. But it's like from the knowing or from the saying to the doing, which is integrity, that is where you bridge the thing. And it's all a matter of repeating. And yeah, sometimes you will not do it, but like get yourself back on track. It's like another little coin to the piggy bank of integrity.
Your current company is about creating new and better ways of remote working. Why is it important to do it right?
So it comes back to the idea of autonomy. So when we began Live Beyond in 2018, we had the view, or let's say the vision, that remote work would take over. Because if people like I wanted autonomy and freedom and a bit more flexibility and the ability to travel and to work, to earn money and be good at my job, but with flexibility, not being stuck in an office or in a cubicle or, where, we thought, okay, there's going to be millions of us at some point. And back in 2018, I just did some basic, let's say, maths. And I said, by 2025, there's going to be a big shift in the generational commandment or management of the business world. The millennials will be occupying positions of power and decision making. And then the boomers are sort of retiring, and then the Gen Zs come. And then 2025 was sort of that, let's say, tipping point. And I thought remote work will take over by 2025. The pandemic accelerated all of that. And then to come back to why remote work was so important for me, why did that matter, was because like most people want freedom. If there's something that, let's say, the Buddha said was like, everyone wants to be happy, everyone wants to be free. And when sometimes you're given freedom, people are afraid of freedom. A lot of people go like, I want to be free. I want to have all these freedom. And once you get it, you don't know what to do with it because we don't have the tools the self-discipline to really make use of that autonomy. So I thought, okay, remote work is coming and we're going to be given the keys of the prison, the freedom to go work from anywhere. And it's going to fail dramatically because we don't know how to manage ourselves, how to be disciplined, how to focus. We're distracted all the time. And this doesn't mean that the office prevents all of this. Actually, productivity has skyrocketed because of home office, which is another complete debate. We can always talk about that. But like the fact that people go to the office doesn't make them more productive. Back in the day, people would just like fool around in the office and, be on Facebook or whatever, just in the 9 to 5.
So what does make them more productive?
Oh, there's a few things, but I would say manage your attention. Be a master of your distractions. That's like the most important thing to be more productive. And then we can define what productivity is because that's a whole other thing. It's like, I think we have misunderstood productivity with doing, getting a lot of things done, the classic efficiency, right? Which is basically getting more things done in less time. And we tend not to think about effectiveness. It's better to be effective rather than efficient. Of course, you need to be efficient and make good use of your time, but make good use of your time doing those things that are most effective, that will actually create the most results or make the most impact. Prioritizing. So remote work gives you that opportunity. Remote work is the best mirror for any company to actually know if shit's working. Sorry about the language, but like, why? Because all these processes and having everyone from 9 to 5, or let's say from 7 to 7, whatever it is, in an office doesn't mean that there's productive work, meaningful work going on, that people are happy, that people are engaged. It doesn't mean. When you give them remote work, you test your culture. Do you have a strong culture? Are people engaged with your company culture? Do people know your values? Do people know your purpose? Do people know your actual mission? Can people work? Like, are they actually working? Do they know how to work? And this was the whole premise of Live Beyond when we started. And it was like, nobody teaches us how to work. Nobody.
What is the Live Beyond formula to getting more things done whilst still maintaining the employee happiness and well-being, let's say?
So it's to get more meaningful things done, right? So the whole thing about
meaningful being
effective, things that move the needle, things that are actually essential, let's say.
So getting the right things done.
Exactly.
Not just things
done. Exactly. There's this thing called like, oh, let's get shit done. I always say this, like, why are you getting shit done? Why are you getting crap done? You know what I mean? It's like, just get essential things done. It's the whole thing about becoming an essentialist. There's this really good book. I forgot the author right now, but it's called Essentialism. It's gonna pop in my head at some point. I think it's George McKeown. I'm butchering his last name. You can Google it. Essentialism. And it's all about that, being a minimalist, being an essential, knowing how to prioritize, knowing how to 80-20 your life. And you basically need the secret formula is basically to know how to prioritize. So always examining on a daily basis, reviewing what are my commitments? What do I want to do? Am I moving towards my purpose? Am I advancing and making progress in my current mission? Are these things really moving the needle? Not just doing.
Mindlessly, which actually ties it back to being present and aware, right?
Exactly. So, and that ties with well-being. So Live Beyond has these 3 core pillars, which are productivity, well-being, and self-refinement. And they're all intertwined, because if you know how to manage your attention, which is manage your focus, you can make use of something that was quoted as or coined as flow states. Be in flow, be in the moment, present, aware in whatever task you are doing. Then you're going to be more creative, more effective, more concentrated, let's say. So mastering your awareness, mastering your attention is one of the key ingredients for that, let's say, magical sauce.
How do we do that?
There's different ways you can do it. Comes again to the well-being part. So train your mind to catch yourself. How do you do that? With different ways. Practicing mindfulness is what I would say. Sometimes mindfulness and, let's say, the Eastern practices have been more popular in the Western world these days. And yet, some people still see them as woo-woo and like, okay, I cannot meditate because I cannot stop thinking and I cannot shut up my mind. Thinking of the mind as something in the brain, which is way beyond that. But like, that's not the point. Nobody can stop thinking. It's impossible. You can be aware of your thoughts. And then when you're needed, when you're working and you're going to be distracted, and when you've been practicing, let's say, mindfulness and developing that neuroplasticity, you will have that half a second in which you're going to grab your phone and become distracted and go like, nope, and then you're back. You know what I mean? So it's like you need to develop. It's a muscle, as going to the gym. So you can do that through mindfulness practices, which is not only meditation, but like a walk in the park without distractions or many other things. So you can do that and practice mastering your attentions. You also can set constraints throughout your working day, no distractions, no external distractions, but to really master focus, you need to master the internal distractions, which is the monkey mind that is always there. So that's one. I would say mastering and managing your energy. That's extremely important to be both productive, have your well-being in check, right? Which is so important for a good lifestyle. How do you manage your energy? Well, I mean, first of all, low-hanging fruit, improve your sleep, improve your recovery. So make good use of that shut-eye time, because it's very important. It's very overlooked, but science is advancing a lot in this regard. It helps you manage your energy throughout the day. Do some exercise, the whole holistic thing. You want to be better at work? Stop and get some exercise, get some mindfulness, come back. You're going to be even more productive, more creative, regardless of your industry. Even if you're a banker, you need creativity for creative problem solving, for creative deal making, for innovation. Like, it's all about this. So it's not one thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Can you share some of your best practices to increase productivity?
It depends on how people define productivity, right? And so I will say, for me, productivity is getting meaningful things done in a given day. So for me, that involves a bit of well-being, a bit of work, a bit of self-development, right? Best practices, let's say, if you wanted to focus on work, let's say, being productive at work, actually. There's different things that you can do. Prioritizing, like set a habit of reviewing your day. Like the daily review is perhaps one of the most overlooked, powerful things that they are. How does it work? Before you shut down your work, set 10, 20 minutes to review your work. This means hopefully not going through a to-do list, which is another advice that I would say. Like to-do lists are badly used. It's good to use lists if you want, but not a massive to-do list. in which everything goes and it only generates stress and procrastination. But 20 minutes at the end of the day to review what got done, what didn't, and renegotiate again. And then prepare next day. So when next day you wake up, you don't have to do this of like, what am I going to do today? You already know what you're going to do. And you know, not because it's in your to-do list, but it's because it's in your calendar. So the power of the calendar and the power of the daily reviews is insane because you can allocate time for specific activities, which is intention setting, basically. I'm setting this intention for here, but then making good use of that is through managing your focus.
This is such a great tool that you just mentioned, which I use also with my clients. Specifically, is the review at the end of the day and setting the next day's goals and tasks and the overview. It's as if you are priming yourself for the next day. And also that takes away the waste of time that you would have the next day if you just wake up without a plan. Again, it's about intentionality, presence, and awareness. They all are recurring patterns there.
And I would say the intentionality of it, because you can have everything planned and your color-coded calendar very pretty and everything that you want to do. And then you wake up next day and let's say, depending on the nature of your work, you got this email that completely effed everything. It's like, oh my God. So allow yourself some buffer, right? Allow yourself to renegotiate things. And life happens. Yeah. It throws you curveballs all the time. And if you just want to be rigid, that's stress. So discipline is not rigidity. You need to have some structure, but it's not rigid. Allow yourself for fluidity.
Yeah, absolutely. Because otherwise that would mean that you're expecting yourself to have full control of everything that happens in life, which is absolutely impossible. And that also resonates with another mantra of mine, which is be kind to yourself. That voice that's within you is with you literally 24 hours a day. And it's probably a good idea to make sure that it's a kind one, because if things are beating you down in the external world that you can't control, the last thing you want is for that voice to be there with the stick or with the whip and be down on you as well.
Crazy. There's this guy called Michael Singer. He has this other book called The Untethered Soul. And he mentions this voice, people call it the monkey mind, the ego, whatever, as your inner roommate. And you will never get rid of this inner roommate. It's going to be there until we pass.
Make it a friend. Whatever.
So try and be nice, and there's ways to train it. There's ways to be aware, We were speaking before the recording about journaling, the power of actually writing things down, to be in touch with that voice of in meditation. There's a type of meditation, loving kindness meditation, metta meditation it's called, and it's all about loving yourself, which is so hard. People were like, oh yeah, we love each other, but I hate myself, You hear some people say.
You mentioned also the attention and focus. Now, these days, a lot of people are working from home, and I think it's only going to increase. What tips or tools would you give for people that want to increase their attention and focus working from home, working from different environments that are not necessarily made for work?
I think remote work is going to continue increasing. Home office, no. Working from home is, I think, the worst thing ever. Why? Because as much as we want to integrate work and life, we need space for different things. So, and in a city like here, like London, it's not easy or cheap or accessible to actually have your own space that you can call my home office, my desk and my room and my stuff. Most people tend to have everything at the same. So that's why we're seeing it right now. We're seeing the consequences of home office. We're seeing burnout levels skyrocketing, mental illness skyrocketing, because you don't have those work habits, right? So my advice, or let's say words for anybody that is going through this right now of working from home, and you like the flexibility, you hate working from home, and then the other option is going back to the office. Not really. be patient. There are companies that are now becoming remote first companies, distributed companies that allow the flexibility of working from anywhere. The typical working from home, WFH in calendars should be working from here. H should stand for here, wherever you feel productive. So you need discipline. You need good work habits. That is my main answer. And it's not a one thing, but really try to avoid distractions. The external distractions are important. It depends on the nature of your work. There's always creative work. There's execution work when you have to do, or when you have to create, or when you have to manage. So it's making use of your attention and your energy. Most people have better energy in the mornings, or more energy. Let's say they're more vital. So it's a good time to get tasks done, right? Things that consume your cognitive capacity the most, right? Problem solving, spreadsheeting, whatever it is. And then in the evening, or whenever your energy levels are lower, do a bit more of managerial management work, which is easy tasks, easy wins. So always keep in mind managing your attention and your energy. Now, focusing on distractions. There's many tips and tricks and things like that, but like use time boxing, right? So I'm going to dedicate this amount of time to this task, nothing more. Because sometimes when we work from to-do lists, it's like report or finish report, That's a very bad way to plan your day, because it's like we think sometimes that we can finish it today, but we're overestimating our capabilities and overestimating things that we cannot control. So you're not going to finish.
Guilty.
And then, so you're already setting yourself up for stress, right? Because it's like, I haven't finished. So next day, finish, and you don't finish. Next day, finish, and you don't finish. So a good tip is to use time boxing in the way it's like, I'm going to work on this report for this time. You don't necessarily have to finish. That allows you to prioritize and break tasks in better, right? So it allows you to organize yourself better. So it's like, okay, I'm going to work on this project for an hour, and that's it. My intention is to work on this hour undistracted. So science proves and statistics that people finish more often if you just dedicate your intention of working undistracted in chunks of time.
So in a way, you're saying that it's detaching from the outcome or the goal. It's focusing on the process.
Yeah. It's always like that. It's always like that. It's like, enjoy the process. If you focus on the process, the whole thing about like, it's not what you do, but how you do it, it's always the same. Like all these answers are the same. So it's like, focus, just do this and train yourself not to get distracted. For the rule, let's say rule of thumb is like 25 minutes at a time. So 25 minutes full on, 5-minute break, 25. That's how I do it in any case.
The Pomodoro technique.
I was shying away from saying it because a lot of people hate it because they find rigidity on it, right? And it's like, oh, but then what if I'm in flow and it's my timer and then I don't want to wake? Well, don't stop. Maybe go for a full hour, but then take a break, because your cognitive capacity will require it. And in learning and neuroscience and behavioral science, you need breaks to sort of
same way as we need recovery for muscle.
Absolutely, it's the same thing. So yeah, those tips. Yeah.
Can you talk to me about the power of community that you've experienced whilst running Live Beyond?
Yeah, it's perhaps the most powerful thing ever. Like when we started was the whole remote work thing, and let's just start doing these remote work experiences around the world, bringing people from all walks of life that are interested in all that we're talking about, how to be a better performer, how to have better health, how to be happy, how to improve yourself. And then when we started doing these experiences, the vibe was amazing. The community feeling was amazing. And I was like, wow, this is very powerful, because we are animals of community. We are
social creatures.
Social creatures. That's it. Animals of habit and social creatures. So it's like when you surround yourself with those mirrors, you can also see what you actually like about them, which is what you like about what you could be. So your development process or journey sort of fast tracks. So there's a lot of power in community and surrounding yourself by people that share values, share likes, interests. There's also the good about the contrasts we've been talking about. It's good to also see the contrast so you can know what you want. But the power in community it's amazing. You share energy, you share learnings, you support each other.
You grow.
You grow. That's
experience life.
Exactly. And the learnings, like when you surround yourself by, there's this theory of like you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with, and yes, and once you experience that, and you're like, man, I also went through that, and you are allowed to put it out there. That's going back to that thing of like getting help, because that's what a coach or a therapist does. Like they go there and allow you to get it out. You can also do that through community. It's like, hey man, I'm going through this tough time. Mate, I went through this. What did you do? I did this. Oh man, and just talking about it, just getting it out is very powerful.
There might be people listening that know and feel like they're not surrounded by the right people. What would you say they can do to find or even build their own community?
Well, I think it's one of the let's say, many good things about technology and internet and all of that. It's easier now to find people that like similar things. So, of course, joining things that excite you. Things like what brings you joy. No, I like working out. So maybe joining a group of people that do that. Or I like to dance, or I like to paint, or I like to write, or stuff like that. Like surrounding yourself intentionally with these people more is one of those tools. Attending events in which you may find these sort of people. I think really the path just leads you to find these people. These people will pop up here and there. You just need to be aware when they come. And like, but I have found in my experience that they will cross your path. Sometimes in the least of the ways you expect it. Maybe you are going to these clubs and everything, but you don't. And then in the cafe or in a house party, you just meet the person. But if you are aware and pay attention to people and know how you're feeling, you know how this person makes you feel, and then you may have this conversation, and that leads to community as well. If you want to start your own community, well, there's many different ways to do it as well. Using platforms, apps, stuff like that. It's a tough one, but like we still need to do more as a society to build community. It's I think it's the future of humanity, like working more as communities rather than other sort of divisions, like collaboration rather than competition, more like that. But yeah, I don't have the answer. I just say it's like, again, comes down to know yourself.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say that it literally comes down to that. And again, of you knowing who you are, what your values are, so you can actually verbalize that and then attract the people and communicate with people that share the same thing.
Absolutely. And it's like this word just popped up, authenticity. It's like living authentically, right? And it's tough, and it comes back to integrity. What do you like? Live that way. What do you want to do? Do it. Like master the muscle or reinforce and strengthen the muscle of integrity. And these people will start appearing in your life. We can go woo as you want, but it's if we talk about, if you believe whatever Einstein said, everything is energy. So that means that everything vibrates in a certain frequency. This is science-based as well as spirituality, but like depending on your mood and your emotions, which are just like energy in motion, you are vibrating at different frequencies. And if you go into like a little bit of basic physics, you know that when you resonate at the same frequency, waves sort of don't destroy themselves, but resonate higher. Merge higher. So that's when you meet somebody, it's like, oh, what a good vibe, and you like that person because maybe you have all these things in common that you have not spoken about yet, but you can feel that.
But they transpire. Exactly. They speak before you speak.
Exactly. 100%. So I would say it starts like that. Building little habits of awareness, working on yourself, trying to, master and tame that voice inside, and that gives you clarity. And you start meeting these people.
We touched upon this lightly already, but what do you think the future of work looks like?
I would hope sort of a more human workplace that I always try to say like this, in which financial progress, financial reward, let's say achievement, success is driven by human well-being and joy. So the future of work will change. We are facing, let's say, some headwinds because the pandemic accelerated the adoption of remote work, or let's say flexible work, independence of location or location independency. And it also accelerated the bad things of remote work, which is what we were talking about: isolation, loneliness, burnout of people working from home, not having the tools. All of a sudden, the ergonomics industry, which is like a multi-million dollar, I don't know if billions industry, got forgotten. Now, oh, work from home, and yeah, what about the ergonomics? Yeah, I don't. So these things we're figuring it out. We need to make and do a lot of work in trust. That's why it comes back to community. A company, the way I see it, is a living organism made by humans. It's nothing else. And if those humans are happy, know how to be productive, and are completely in their self-actualization journey, the company as a whole is going to excel and is going to be more human. And people are going to be able to trust each other because they feel they're part of a community. But the community needs to have a purpose and a vision and a set of values that, unite them as a community. If you don't share those values, that's okay. Go to another company. But I feel, or I would expect and hope, that the future of work is more human in that way. That's what I mean by humanity. You can see it if you want to think about location independence. This is like the first step. Oh yeah, we got out of the office. Fine. Clapping. Old school. We saw it coming. What's happening, or what hopefully is going to happen, is location independence of time as well, which means asynchronous work. So we're still used to work in the same time. So let's say you can work from home and the other person in the office, but we're working at the same time. Most companies still operate this way. The future of work hopefully is more distributed, in which, yes, that doesn't mean you're never going to see your teammates and you're going to never work at the same time. No, because we are animals of social creatures. We need that. But we need also the asynchronous work, which is I'm able to do my autonomous work, and that somehow links to the whole inner workings of the company. It's possible. There's companies that have been doing this for many years, fully distributed work, which means that you could be in Bali, the other person could be in LA, and work is being done 24/7. That doesn't mean that people are working 24/7, but the work is being done without you having to sacrifice other things: mental health, physical health, relationships. So hopefully the future of work is human in that way, and it helps people to work towards their purpose, work towards their vision, and find mastery and self-actualization. It's a big task. That's why I said maybe it's that thing that we will never reach, but it's good having it as a North Star. But I think we can do way better than what we're doing right now.
At least we're moving in the right direction right now.
Yeah.
What's next for you, David?
What's next? So focusing on Live Beyond at the moment.
Or what's next for Live Beyond?
What's next for Live Beyond? So a few exciting things. We've got our, let's say, 2025 vision that 2022, today is the last day of Live Beyond Phase 1. Live Beyond Phase 2 starts in October 2022, and it will be all the way until the end of next year. And we have good things. We're going to focus more on the teams side, so remote team development, with all these philosophies and methodologies and habits and tips and tricks that we'll be talking about, but helping teams develop. We have this notion that if you put a group of people together to work, we call it a team. I disagree. I think you earn the badge of team. You are, up to that point, a work group that is just put together to work together. You need to go through stages of development, stages of trust, stages of conflict, stages of decision making, stages of conflict resolution that hopefully make you evolve as a high performing, unanimous, team cohesion. What's the word in English? Cohesed, united.
An organism that moves together.
Exactly. So it's like that is the next step for Live Beyond, and we have more exciting things happening in the future. But that's where I'm really focused on and what really drives my motivation, because we've already started working with a few startups, a few remote hybrid companies, and we're seeing the results. So, yeah.
As an ending tradition, I will ask you, what is your recipe for happiness?
Remember tying it to that thing about before I die, ... I want to be happy. I would say that I've found that happiness is this. What do I mean by that? The recipe is come back to the present moment. Come back, always. That's the recipe. Be present, in 2 words. Because when you detach yourself from the human condition of being in the future or in the past, worrying about the past or expecting and being anxious about the future, and you have that muscle of mindfulness to come back and be here, be now, you can realize that most of the problems that you have are not in the moment. They're somewhere in the future or the past, or there's things that you cannot really control. So come back. You might be going through a tough time. That's fine. But when you find contentment in the moment, in the present moment, I think that's the key to happiness. That would be mine. Yeah.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. You've been great. Thank you.
Thank you for the invite again.
Hello, friends. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and share it with someone. I would love to hear your feedback and suggestions as to what guests you would like to see on the show next. See you next week.